Hello and welcome back to Bossing English with Mr. F. We're going to look at Macbeth and how to answer the extract question, different approaches and things to think about. We've got a couple of extract questions here, one with just one character speaking, so a soliloquy, and one with a couple of characters speaking and maybe the differences we might need between them. Let's just start with what would you do when you get the question? Well, this is pretty useful, this is useful, and only after you've looked at that and that do you want to come to the extract. So let's do that. Read the following extract from Act 1, Scene 5 of Macbeth, and then answer the question that follows. At this point in the play, Lady Macbeth is speaking. She has just read Macbeth's letter telling her about his meeting with the three witches. Now, this is really significant, and maybe if you read this, you wouldn't remember that, or just from this cue, you wouldn't remember what happened here, which is kind of just before, and that's what makes all of this really significant. So this is a real gift, and so I would always recommend reading this, just to kind of help you contextualize this, and we need to think about what comes before and what comes after. We might do that at the top of the page, just as an aid memoir. Right, I'm still not looking at the extract. I'm going to go down to the question. Starting with this speech, explore how Shakespeare presents ambition in Macbeth. So it's a theme question. Our theme is ambition. Presents means methods, and that really means language, structure and form. Write about how Shakespeare presents ambition in this speech. So that's first bullet point, in that play as a whole, second bullet point. So I need to do both of those things, otherwise my mark could be capped at level 2 in the mark scheme, which is a maximum of 10 marks out of 30. You're also getting marks here for AO3, so I might, one thing you could just put on there is a reminder that you've got to do AO3 context. This is for the kind of language you're using, so if you're able to use dramatic terminology like anagnorisis or peripeteia or hamartia, those kind of dramatic terms from ancient tragedies that are still being employed by Shakespeare, or any kind of conceptual ideas that you may have, that high order vocabulary, that could help boost your marks with this kind of SPAG vocabulary phrasing mark here. All right, I've got my question highlighted now. Maybe think about what came before, what came after. One thing I know before I even say anything is that these are the first words. So a lot of what's going on here is characterization. The audience is meeting Lady Macbeth for the first time, hearing her words for the first time. Prior to this, she's been reading her husband's letter aloud. So this is a reaction to the letter, and because of the way she reacts, we get an awful lot of characterization happening. If we think about all of that is the dramatic effect, and because in our analysis we need to think about the effect on the audience, if I think about the dramatic effect of introducing a character, having her reacting to a letter from her husband, and showing that she's more ambitious maybe than her husband at this moment of first meeting, that would be really useful. Now, other things to consider is, structure and form. When they give you an extract, they are expecting you to think about the structure. They've chosen it for a reason. So you might want to think about the start, the middle, the end, and any changes that happen throughout. So that's one way of analysing the structure of this. Another way of thinking about structure would be why Shakespeare is showing her this way at this moment in the play. Because of all of this here. So all of this, in a way, could be a structural point about Shakespeare needs to show her like this early on, so that we get to see her, as that character, ambitious character from the get-go. All right, in terms of other things, language, let's have a look. What is Shakespeare maybe saying about or showing here? Glamis thou art, and shalt be what thou art promised. Well, that sounds pretty certain, doesn't it? Shalt be, certainty, shalt be. There's a kind of modal verb, and it shows determination. So she's determined to make him be that. So she sounds determined at the start, and by the end, We know that she's going to pour words into his ear, and all that impedes thee from the golden round. That's a metaphor for the crown, so she's already got an idea of the crown being on his head, again showing that how ambitious she is, and that's how it ends. So she starts where she ends, being ambitious and certain, and going to help him. All that impedes thee. What else have we spotted here? Well, all the way through, it's a conversation with someone who's absent. Thee, thy, thou, thou'st, the. I think that's quite a nice thing to pin on, the fact that she's conversing with her husband in absence, and kind of almost could be seen as rehearsing how she, her arguments for persuading him to be to persuade him to do what he'll need to do in order to get the crown. We get some kind of interesting comments that I think we can tie to context, which would be this one: "Thou wouldst be great, not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. Too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way." This suggests that there are underhand ways, and the word I would use is Machiavellian. Machiavellian, The Prince by Machiavelli, was a book, a guide to getting ahead in the Renaissance period, how to get power, basically a manual to getting power. And she seems to understand that there are shortcuts that you can take. So she is Machiavellian in that kind of Renaissance, has understood in the Renaissance world that there are shortcuts and a kind of illness, which we could see as a synonym for evil, or wicked ways, or corrupt ways to get ahead in the world. Of course, there's that wonderful metaphor, too full of the milk of human kindness, and we could explore the imagery of being too full, the intensifier too, and the idea of full, overflowing, milk being linked to human kindness and virtue, and that this is seen as a hindrance again, and we could pull that back to being Machiavellian. And in contrast to that milk, we've got "I may pour my spirits in thine ear," and this idea of these kind of liquid evil that she might pour in his ear to get him where she needs him to be. And we could explore that. And then I'm just going to change colour here. Let's go with green for this one here in the play as a whole. Well, there are easy ways to pivot just as soon after when she does the Raven speech. Turn my milk to gall, how she will, unsex herself to get what she needs. We could explore the effect ambition has on their soul. The fact that they know they're doing evil. Stars, hide that your fires. See not my deep and dark desires. The madness of Lady Macbeth is a consequence of her ambition. And so we can what we can see here is a kind of punishment. That's what's going on there. So we could explore that. The consequences of ambition. The same with Macbeth and the tyranny. Blood will have blood. I am in blood stepped in so far, etc., etc. The kind of tyranny that ambition begets ambition and becomes more violent, and the violence linked to ambition in this world, and maybe a sense of regret at the end in Macbeth's tomorrow's speech, with the nihilism and the regret and the meaningless. The fact that everything he's done signifies nothing. It's just sound and fury, and this kind of idea that ambition, the result of that ambition, has led to this kind of nihilistic worldview, especially when he has the anagnorisis of understanding he's been played by the witches. All right, that's a first look at that question. Just have a quick look at, ways, approaches to that before we move on. You need to analyse the extract, language, structure, form in relation to the question keyword. Analyse the whole play in relation to the question keyword. I think you've seen me do both of those things. Add in some AO3 context. We talked about Renaissance England, Machiavelli. Didn't get onto the Great Chain of Being, but could have done in terms of the world, the chaos that emerges from their ambition. We've talked a little bit about maybe Shakespeare showing how evil ambition is punished by God. Different approaches. You could do a whole long paragraph analysing the extract and a whole long paragraph analysing the play, or, which I think is a more kind of fluid way of doing it, is kind of zoom in on the extract, zoom out to the whole play, zoom in on the extract, zoom out on the whole play. In a way, that's a bit more of an intuitive approach. What ratio do you need to have between the extract and the whole text? Well, you can do, it doesn't have to be 50-50, you can do 70-30 either way. So if the extract is more interesting, you could focus more on that as long as you get to the whole text at some point, and vice versa. If the extract is a stinker, you can concentrate more on the whole text. You also don't have to start with that. I've had students who do excellent answers who talk about the theme elsewhere and then come back to the extract, but just remember that you have to do both. Right, I will come back and talk about a different approach if it's two characters speaking, and I'll come back and do that shortly. Okay, bye for now. Like button, you know what to do. Subscription, you know what to do. Make it happen, people.